I was always fascinated by behavior. So how people buy something, how people decide what to buy, when to buy, where to buy. And later on, I studied applied data science as well. And I was like, whoa, why can we not just mix those two together? While playing this game or being part of this activity, they leave data behind because it's like a quiz, and that is data we use. The biggest source of conflict, well, the day-to-day tasks, I guess it is the house corporation can see that nowadays behavior of neighbors is escalating quickly because of the lower tolerance people have for each other. If there was an activity being organized, they didn't show up. So there is an intention and action problem because they have intention to actually wanting, to participate and be more social, but when the reality is they don't participate.
Hello.
Hello.
What's your name and what do you do?
Hi, my name is Nene and I run a data-driven behavioral intelligence company. So what we do is that we use behavioral data to understand human behavior. And with those insights, we try to change behavior in a positive direction. And this is mainly in the livability context, such as littering, nuisance, social isolation. For instance, when you walk down the streets, you see like a lot of garbage on the ground and you're like, oh my God, why don't people make use of the trash cans that are in the streets? Well, that is where we come in because we try to understand the barrier between someone's intention and, the action, because everybody wants like a clean street to live in, but sometimes, the outcome is not always there. So we try to understand the barrier. And then with those insights, we try to organize interventions that are geared towards changing people in a positive behavior. So changing the behavior in a positive direction, I mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you start with this problem? How did you solve this problem and what's your background?
So I studied, my background is in marketing psychology, and I was always fascinated by behavior. So how people buy something, how people decide what to buy, when to buy, where to buy. And later on, I studied applied data science as well. And I was like, whoa, why can we not just mix those two together? Not only, to understand behavior in a sense of driving people to buy a certain product, but also trying to understand behavior, why people don't act in a certain way or why people held back in doing a certain activity or
Yes.
behavior.
And how does the process of data recollection look like? Which kind of data you are collecting in each of the interventions?
So we all know that behavior is influenced by various factors. For instance, timing, weather, social background, and all these things translate into data. And these are data that we collect. For instance, sensory data when it comes to the garbage, but also weather. What kind of seasons are there when people trash or litter a lot, and which seasons are they not littering a lot? So that is important data that we collect. But also, the common focus groups that we organize, surveys, but also scientific papers that explain behavior. We always try to also gather data that's already been there when it comes to certain problems that had to do with littering, so that we can also understand, like, okay, this is what happened in this area, does it apply to this area? So there's so much data around when it comes to behavior. And our task or what we do is actually gather all kinds of data together to see what kind of correlations there are or what kind of patterns there are. So in a certain behavior, so that we can, find out the barrier between the intention and the action. And one of an interesting way that we collect data is also through our data decoys. So a data decoy that we use is, for instance, like a physical installation, like people can take part of, or maybe a party. For instance, last year we created what kind of neighbor are you generator. So it was like a big installation where people could actually play a game, live game, to understand what kind of neighbor they are. And then they had to play a quiz to see if that outcome was actually true. While playing this game or being part of this activity, they leave data behind because it's like a quiz, and that is data we use to collect and to understand better what the barriers are.
Is there one factor that makes urbanization or population livable or with a good and happy living style? Or would you say that it depends on the circumstances of the neighborhood or on the people living there? What's your take on this?
It really depends on the neighborhood, what kind of people live there. I mean, no neighborhood is the same, and no target audience is also the same. So it's really different. And it really depends also on the social factors as well, but also the socio-economic factors of a certain neighborhood, why people do certain things different than the other part of a certain neighborhood. So that is something we very seriously take into account, and that's why the data that we gather is also really based on contextual data. So that we understand, these are some contexts that we need to bear in mind for this certain target audience, so that we just don't make a certain conclusion based on, an overall situation.
What do your clients value the most when they come to you?
Insights in the data that we collect. Also, the organizing of the data, because mostly, a lot of companies, they don't really have the data structure in check. They have a lot of data, but they don't know how to, store it good, or structure it well. And that is where we also come into play, how to structure it well and how to understand what kind of data to collect when you want a certain insight on a certain behavior. That is something they don't really have knowledge on this, because especially the housing corporations, their issue or their main issue is not data, Their main issue is trying to provide a good housing to people. But nowadays, with also the certain government rules that are in place, for instance, that 70% of the people have to mix with the 30% that have a baggage, as in vulnerable people, they need to live together. And sometimes this can cause a lot of havoc in a certain area, because you have a certain target audience have to mingle with another target audience that are more vulnerable.
Is this for housing, social housing? Or
yes.
Okay.
But also the Netherlands has a really, it has to not only do social housing, but also the infrastructure of a certain neighborhood. They always want it to be mixed with
different social classes.
Different social classes, but also different kind of backgrounds, as in someone who just came out of a rehabilitation center, or especially when the Dutch government also reduced spendings when it comes to rehabilitation centers. So the spendings on that got reduced, so people don't really live, so the vulnerable people don't live in these institutions anymore. They just, they are obliged to get housing in a area that, well, I cannot say normal people live, but people who have a less of a baggage than them. So actually controlling, for instance, this is an example, but controlling this issue is kind of harsh for housing corporations. So that they have a, they have a lot of things on their plate. So, for instance, trying to see how they can mingle, the participation, try to organize activities that, makes these target audience get to know each other better or connect better, so that social cohesion can actually be more present in this kind of neighborhood. So,
what's the biggest source of conflicts in neighborhoods?
The biggest source of conflict, well, the day-to-day tasks, I guess it is littering. That is something that it's like a day-to-day thing for the housing corporations. But if you look at the overall complication, which they just don't have a hand in, or it's hard to control, it's also the mingling, the combining the various target audience together and make it like a place where social cohesion is, a big part. Because nowadays people have less tolerance for each other, and now they can see that. The house corporation can see that nowadays behavior of neighbors is escalating quickly because of the lower tolerance people have for each other.
Which is one of the challenges you have right now?
Well, the challenge I have with my company is that behavioral intelligence is kind of a hard thing to sell because it is complicated and it's also kind of new, especially in the social housing setting and livability context. Data science is, it's been done, changing of behavior, it's also been done. But the combination of these two, it's something that still needs more recognition or needs to be understood. People need to try to understand it more, especially in this kind of context we're working in. So the education part of it it's kind of long, and so that is strictly patience that has to come into this. Yeah.
Okay. What's the role of AI or LLMs, let's say, in a company like yours? How do you use AI?
Well, so we collect data manually. We clean the data. So everything that has to do with data aggregation, we do it manually. I guess machine learning is part of AI. Some people debate that. I don't know. Yeah. But we mostly do machine learning. And of course, I guess it is AI as well. But the fact that it's the optimization of our process, because we use a certain methodology when it comes to the issue that we try to attack. It's called the behavioral loophole detection method. And that is actually the whole process of collecting data towards the end product, changing behavior. And that is a method that we're still validating. And as soon as that is being validated, of course, it needs to be optimized. And that is where AI can be a good role, plays a big role. But for now, we do the data aggregation manually, and the machine learning aspect as well with the algorithms that we use, and the behavioral models that we also use, COM, B, and Ocean.
Is there a specific design of buildings or urbanizations that make neighborhoods more cohesive? Maybe more open spaces, or maybe a space for the kids to play. Is there a specific setting that makes families and other, no?
There is no It really depends on a certain area with a certain context. You cannot just say, okay, we need to make a playground for the kids so that people behave better. You know, it is not just like that, because there has been a lot of interventions, activities to actually combat certain problems in the neighborhood, but it don't work because people don't, or housing corporations don't have or municipalities don't have the capacity to actually understand the underlying behavior or do research on the underlying behavior that causes, for instance, social isolation or not participating in certain activities, because you can create an intervention or create an activity, but people might not show up. Well, why is that? So if people don't show up, the intervention,
Exactly.
it doesn't work. So it is all about the underlying factors, and that is where we come in, because we try to fasten the process. And also because of our expertise, we can do it more thoroughly, and take it out of a housing corporation or a municipality's hands, because their priorities are their number one priority is not to. They're not a data company. Let me just say that. They're not a data company. Their number one, a housing corporation's number one priority, like I said before, is make sure that people get a proper housing, and make sure that the facility is good and clean, and so that people are satisfied.
So, which is one of your last projects, and which changes did your client implement?
So one of our recent projects was focused on Science Park, not the one in Amsterdam, but the one in Utrecht. It's mainly a campus where students live, but also universities are and research companies are, and students study. But the plan is to actually make more houses there. But the people who live there don't actually regard the place as a nice living area, because there are not a lot of facilities that make it a nice and livable area, and all the buildings are a bit segregated. They're apart from each other, and you think, as a student, you're like, oh, campus living, nice, party, having fun with various students, but none of it is there. So their whole thing is like, these students were, they were like, hey, what's going on? We want more activities. We want more, facilities that actually make us feel that, the livability is good. So the whole problem is that if there was an activity being organized, they didn't show up. So there is an intention and action problem, because they have intention to actually wanting, to participate and be more social, but when the reality is they don't participate. So that is where we came in, because we tried to understand what the barrier was, and so we did the data collection, and it was really successful. Also because of the data decoy, so what I mentioned before, the neighborhood generator, or what kind of neighbor are you generator. This attracted 91% more respondents than a normal survey. Yeah. So it was really high. So we spoke to 25% of the people living there. So that's a really high number because of the engaging factor of collecting the data. And yeah, we came across very interesting points. I don't know if I can lay it all out here right now, but I guess one of those interesting insights is that basic safety is great, but when it comes to social safety, it's low. So people are less, open to just start a conversation, deeper conversations. And the activities that they organized before was really geared to really getting to know each other, like a barbecue. Yeah. In such a setting, you need to talk to people, you need to, get to know each other and stuff. But the social safety is not high. So it can be a barrier if there's going to be activity like, okay, a game night or barbecue. People will be like, oh, it's in a kind of a setting you'll do with your friends, because you know them. If you don't know people and the social safety is low, you're not prone to actually.
What is the social safety?
Social safety is the aim, or I said that the social safety is the feeling that you can express yourself freely. If being secure with a conversation, that you can express anything you want to say. But if you're not like that, if you feel like you can't express yourself, or because you don't know if you're being judged or stuff like that, it is hard. And so that's what that was an insight that was really interesting, because they are actually interested into actually participating. But I guess it depends on what kind of activation, or what kind of event it is. And what we also found out is that majority of the people living there, their number one hobby is sports, mainly jogging. So what if you organize an activity that is mainly focused on a jogging day? The fact that you come together and do one thing, jogging, and it is a low effort activity, because you don't need to, have like a really deep conversation when, in comparison with a barbecue, because with a barbecue it's like you take food and then you need to talk. Yeah. But with jogging, it's like, yeah, we're jogging, and then a conversation will flow from there. So that is an interesting insight.
And then they implemented.
The implementation is still ongoing. So first the insights, and there are so many more insights. It's like it's so easy, or it's so you think like, oh my God, of course, but you don't think of it
because you
direct.
Have the data.
You have the data. You can redirect it and stuff like that, and that is what. That is our aim. That is what we do.
Amazing. Which is one lesson that you would like to give? You could give to any other entrepreneur or any human, doesn't matter.
Any human.
I
guess to not give up, and also I do sometimes have problems with expressing myself, especially with what I'm doing, behavioral intelligence. It is really hard for me sometimes to translate the technical stuff into something very easy, so that everybody can grasp it, because it is a very hard subject, especially when you go into the depth of it. And sometimes I do have it's for myself, that I just want to explain everything, but not everybody can understand it the way I understand it in my head, because I'm so into all these numbers and data and intelligence and stuff like that. But for a person who's not in it, the person doesn't understand. So I think practice a lot. And sometimes, I guess it is a valuable lesson for me. And maybe some other people can also relate to it.
Well, I did understand, eh?
You didn't understand
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
Also have a background in data science.
Yes, exactly. But sometimes it is a hard sell, especially for people who are not in it, especially for housing corporations, municipalities, You really need to be in data science itself to understand, the process of how to collect data, how to aggregate it, how to clean it, how to standardize it, and what kind of algorithms you need to put on the data to understand, regression, patterns, correlations, and then the insights. And then from the insights, the changing of the behavior, the intervention. So it's an interesting path that I'm walking in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And last thing, any ask for the audience or to the network? Any ask for a connection or specific or general ask?
Well, for now, we're really busy trying to validate the behavioral loophole detection method. So the method we use to actually collect collect data towards changing behavior. And so context on housing, municipalities, people who are working in the housing sector, or everybody that has to do with livability. Well, I like to reach out to them and see what we can do for each other.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for the interview.
You're welcome.
That's it.